your coffee was good. Welcome back to everybody who's tuning in on the net. We have two more presentations, and then we'll have half an hour for questions and commentaries. Our first presentation this half is by Ms. Anna Zasova. She is a researcher at BICEPS, which is the Baltic International Centre for Economic Policy Studies, and she will be speaking about tying benefits to earnings when informality is present. Please, Ms. Zasova.
Organizers. It's really great pleasure to be here, and I represent here the other side. So we are the data users, and BICEPS is an independent research center associated with Stockholm School of Economics in Riga, and we didn't use, for the project that I'm going to present today, we didn't use the poverty data, but we used administrative data set which is of very good quality. So, and we think that what we have in the is interesting policy conclusions. So I think we are an example of using administrative data for policy advice. And the paper that I will present today is a joint work with Vitaly Shichin, who is associated researcher at BICEPS, and at the moment he's finalizing PhD at Toulouse School of Economics. So basically the question that we tried to answer in our paper, we tried to figure out, are there any negative side effects of tying benefits to earnings when there is tax evasion? And why did we turn to this question? Well, basically policymakers in many countries, especially in lower income countries, are struggling and facing big challenges in combating various forms of tax evasion. And well, tax evasion has a pretty direct link with poverty, because these are mostly poor and the most vulnerable groups of the population who are suffering from tax evasion, because when tax revenues are not sufficient, the governments cannot provide adequate benefits, adequate pensions. So this topic has also some poverty implications. And there is growing literature which says that if you wanted to combat to improve tax compliance, one of the potential tools is to tie benefits to earnings, because then people will have better incentives to pay taxes. And there are a number of papers on this topic which show that once people are given the right incentives, once they understand why they should pay taxes, they will start paying taxes, they will increase declared labor supply, and declared wages will grow. So just to give you a couple of examples of this literature, so these are mainly papers on countries, of course, where tax evasion is high. And there are, so these papers basically show that after reforms which tied pension benefits to declared earnings, people started, so the declared earnings and declared labor supply increased. But on the other hand, there is another strand of literature that is developing quite quickly, and partly thanks to availability of administrative and good quality data sets from different countries. This literature studies adjustments that people and income shifting in response to various tax reforms. And many of the papers in this area actually study Denmark. Why? Because there is very good data set, administrative data set in Denmark, but of course it's not a country which is well known for tax evasion, but still, even in Denmark, it is documented that, empirically documented, that people do adjust their income in response to tax incentives, and there are papers which show that, for example, there was a big reform in 2009 when taxes for high wage earners were reduced, and in response to that reforms, people, in anticipation of this reform, people shifted income, postponed income to the future to enjoy lower marginal tax rates. Then there are also papers on Pakistan which study income shifting between tax bases. So if one tax base is less taxed, then income is shifted to that base. There is also a paper on Pakistan which studies income shifts in and out of informality. With these two strands of literature, one saying that if you give the people the right incentives, they will start paying taxes, and the other literature which shows that people do manage to shift income and to try to obtain the most favorable, to face the most favorable tax and benefit gains. What it is possible and what we thought and what we want to study is that suppose we introduce a contributory benefit that depends on declared earnings, but suppose that people manage to increase the declared earnings or declared labor only for a short period of time. And in this case, the only result that we will have will be a net loss to the government, because there will be no permanent increase in tax compliance, but at the same time the government will face extra costs in terms of higher benefits in the future. And this is exactly what we look at in this paper. So what do we need to have this scenario? We need some generous benefits, so that people are really interested in engaging in various kind of manipulations, and we need a relatively short period in which people have to make these contributions towards higher benefits. And in this paper, we have analyzed the setting, which is exactly as I described here. We analyze the child care benefit in Latvia, and in particular we analyze 2005 reform, when the previously universal child care benefit was tied to the earnings of the parents. And just to advertise a little bit our results, I will talk about them later in more detail, but what we find is that there is a significant increase in wages of women during pregnancy. So during the period when the woman already knows that she is pregnant, and the period which counts towards higher benefits in the future. And another conclusion that we have is that this effect is stronger in small firms, and this is in line with previous literature which shows that tax evasion is higher in smaller firms. So a bit more detail on the institutional background that we analyze. So in Latvia there is high degree of informality, and this in particular takes the form of undeclared wages. So the exact magnitude varies depending on the surveys, depending on the methods, but in most cross-country surveys, Latvia is somewhere on the top among the European countries. As I mentioned, we look at the 2005 reform. This was kind of a major reform, because before 2005, the only benefit that was provided to parents of newly born children was childcare benefit, but it was flat amount, and it was quite low. It was around 20% of the average net wage So basically, it was quite modest. But starting January 2005, this generous childcare benefit was introduced. It was paid until the child reached 1 year. And the size of the benefit was equal to 70% of the individual's previous gross earnings, and which is approximately equal to the net wage. So it's quite generous. For 1 year, one of the parents can receive his or her previous wage. The benefit was capped at 558 euros, but basically at the time when the benefit was introduced, it was binding for very small share of parents. And the average that the wage that matters for the size of the benefit is calculated over 12 months period, which ends 3 months before the months when the child is born. So basically, this qualification period partly overlaps with pregnancy. And to see this, just on this graph, so on the horizontal axis you see months, so 9th month, the child is born. Then we go back 3 months. This is the end of the period that counts towards the benefit. Then we go back another 12 months. This is when the period starts. And there are 5 months in which pregnancy overlaps with the qualification period. And so our idea is that in these 5 months, women have incentives to increase their declared wage, because this period, well, it's almost half of the whole qualification period. So it is possible to affect the average wage over 12 months. And we call this period conversion period. Why conversion? Well, because we think that in this period, women and their employers convert previously undeclared wages to declared wages. That's why we call it conversion period, and this term will show up also in later slides. Only one of the parents could receive the benefit, but it could be either mother or father. And initially the benefit was not compatible with employment, but then gradually it became possible to simultaneously work and receive the benefit. And why it is important, I will talk about that a bit later, but the effect of this change was that many men started receiving the benefit. Until it was not compatible with employment, it was typical that a woman was taking care of a baby and receiving the benefit. But starting from 2007, it became quite common that the woman was at home with a baby, but father was working and receiving the full benefit amount. Okay, so now probably the most important part. So I'll try to explain so our task is to see if pregnancy affects wage. And we use differences setup, and at the most basic level, what we would like to do. We would like to compare wages of those women who were pregnant with wages of those women who were not. And if we see that there is a difference between wages of pregnant women with non-pregnant women, then we could interpret this difference as a conversion of wages from undeclared to declared wages.
Just a clarification.
Yep.
So when you say wages, it's always declared wages?
Yes, yeah. Because we have administrative data which only contains declared. And graphically, it looks like this. So the bottom line, the line on the bottom is our control group. which are all women who were not pregnant, and our treated group is the pregnant women. In the first period, nobody is pregnant, so we observe parallel trends, and in the second period, when pregnant women become pregnant, we see some deviation from the trend. And so at the most basic level, we would interpret this difference as wage conversion. But of course, there is a big problem with this approach because pregnancy might be not an exogenous event. It is absolutely plausible that women expect that they will get promoted, and that's why they make this decision to have a baby. To address this problem, we split our sample of women further into two groups. One is public sector employees, and another one is private sector employees. And now graphically it looks like this. So absolutely like the same as here, but now we have two graphs, one for public sector, one for private sector. And you see that in the public sector, we also allow for some divergence in the trends, but here we interpret it as anticipation effect. So women anticipate an increase in wage, and so we allow for this deviation. But in the private sector, there is also some anticipation effect, but on top of that, there is wage conversion effect. So if we take the difference of these differences, we get wage conversion.
So how can you, so the public sector, it's not an issue of informality of wages, right? The public sector is an issue of anticipation of.
Yeah, well, this is our assumption, yes, that there might be some bonuses maybe, but there shouldn't be any envelope wages. Yeah. But still, there is still a problem because the anticipation effects are not necessarily identical in private and the public sector, because in the public sector, it might be much easier to predict your promotion. In the private sector, it might be more unexpected. So we allow for different anticipation effects in the private and the public sector. And we address this by making the use of the 2005 reform. So before the reform, since there was no big generous contributory benefit before the reform, we assumed that there were no incentives to manipulate your wage during pregnancy. After 2005, these incentives, we think, were there, and that's why we should observe this wage conversion only after 2005. And so the end regression that we estimate is here. And we are interested in this alpha 3 coefficient, which measures the difference in wage for those women who are pregnant, employed in the private sector, and after the 2005 reform. But actually, this is a conservative estimate because we might accept the assumption that anticipation effects in private and public sector are the same. And if we accept this, then our end estimate would be alpha 1 plus alpha 3. But if we want to be conservative, then it's only alpha 3. Okay. Oh, no. Data that we use. So we use administrative data provided by State Social Security Agency. We have monthly wage data for all Latvian employees, so we can track employees in time. It's a matched employer-employee data set. As we have, as to demographics, the information is quite limited, so the only thing that we see is gender, date of birth, and we see the legal ownership of the firm, which allows us to sort firms into private and public sector. Then we have information about, but we have no household data in this data set. It's just individual level data, so we don't see children actually of each woman. What we do, we have another data set on child-related benefits, and from that data set, we are able to identify children born of each woman. And we focus only on the first child. Why? Because we think that this will, so if we looked at like third child, for example, then the anticipation effect could be much stronger. It is perhaps quite easy to believe that a woman might take a decision to have a fourth or third child if she is given good incentives, but we think that for the first child, these effects are much weaker. And here are our baseline results. So what we ran many regressions basically, but the main results always stay. So this coefficient alpha 3 that I showed previously is always significant, always positive. So it means that in the private sector, after the reform, during pregnancy, wages grow always faster than all other wages. And actually, during pregnancy in the private sectors, wages are always higher. Now, maybe I will show these results in graphical representation. So the first thing that we looked at after the baseline regressions, we looked at the heterogeneity of this effect by the firm size. So we estimated again similar regression, but here we allowed the alpha 3 coefficient to vary over time, or to be different for different firms. And what we see, so here we see the estimate, alpha 3, and on the horizontal axis there are these are the size of the firm, and the baseline category are firms larger than that are larger than 50 employees. And so the effect is almost linear. Like the largest effect is in firms where the number of employees is below 5, and then it's significant, and you see this very nice linear relationship. Then we ran a couple of placebo regressions to check if our results if we observe our results only in periods when we expect them to be observed. So first of all, we ran the same regression by years of pregnancy. And as I said, we expect that before 2005, there were no incentives to manipulate, to convert wages. We believe so. So we expected to have no results until 2005 and results after 2005. And these are our results. Again, very nice. So you see the baseline category here is the year 2003. And again, there is no effect until 2005, and then the effect is stronger each year. And the first year when we have the significant and positive effect is exactly 2005, when this reform was implemented. Another placebo test, we estimated the coefficient by months of pregnancy. And here we of course expect that there is no effect before the beginning of the pregnancy, and that the effect starts with the first start after the beginning of the pregnancy. And here are the results, which we were very surprised when we ran this regression first. So it's exactly on the first months of pregnancy when we start to observe positive and significant effect. And there is no effect before, so this suggests that anticipation effects are very limited. And interestingly, that this effect reaches the maximum in the 3rd month of pregnancy, and then it goes down. And then there is no significant effect afterwards. So this is completely consistent with the story that the qualification period for the benefit overlaps with the ends in the 5th month of pregnancy. But then a very important question, of course, is what happens after this? Because if we see that wages go up, if this effect is permanent, then maybe the policies has achieved one of its objectives, so the tax evasion, the tax compliance improves. But unfortunately, it's difficult to test it, and the reason for that is that, well, women disappear from employment about this time, and when they come back, their wages are much lower, and unfortunately in the data we don't have information about hours worked. And of course we see that wages are much lower, but we don't want to interpret it as a reduction in wage, because most likely many women switch to part-time jobs. But good for us, as I said, so in 2007, men started receiving this benefit. And yeah, one more thing. Another interesting finding also when we were thinking about how to estimate what happens to women's wages after they come back. It was really surprising to see that most of women, despite they come back to the labor market, they come to different employers. So in the private sector, it's only about 40 to 50% of women that come to the same employer. And this is actually one of the, we think that this evidence can be used to argue that, well, the wage legalization effect is only temporary, because if a woman goes to a different employer, then, well, the story starts from the beginning. We don't know what happens there. That's why we used the sample of men and repeated all the estimations. And these are the results of men. And first of all, I would like to just to concentrate on this part. So this is the 1st month of partner's pregnancy, and we start to observe a positive effect with the 2nd month. And then again, the effect disappears with the 6th month. 7th and 8th. What happens here? Well, basically, it's what we see in the data that in the public sector, there are big wage gains for men around this time. We don't know actually we're not sure how to interpret it. Maybe it's some kind of bonuses which public sector employees get for babies being born. But so basically this negative effect is partly driven by the fact that wages in the public sector go up, not by a reduction in the private sector. But what is important to us that we see that this effect persists only during this conversion period, then it disappears. So the conclusion. So we see that there is an increase in declared wages during the 1st months of pregnancy, during those months which count toward the childcare benefit. And we rationalize this fact by conversion of undeclared wages into declared wages. The policy implication is that in the circumstances when tax evasion is high, it might be not, tying benefits to previous earnings might not be a very effective tool if people manage to increase their wage only temporarily. because the only result that we get in that case are fiscal losses because of higher benefits that the government has to pay. So, thank you very much for your attention.
I see hands up for questions already. Very good.
Thank you so much. I was curious. I wasn't sure if I understood correctly about the reporting of from the workers' point of view. So they're the ones reporting their income for tax purposes at this regularity, and that's the data that you see. Is that right? Yes. Right. So you have both people who are employed in for a company and also people who are self-employed. Is that?
We excluded self-employed.
You excluded self-employed.
Yeah, because they have slightly different rules for calculation of the benefits. This is one reason, but also in Latvia, self-employed are is a very small group, so we thought it wouldn't distort the results too much.
Okay, so my question was sort of tied to this. So was there any circumstance under which somebody would want to misreport their income during this period of time so that it would look like they had higher income and they would take a tax hit for that period of time where they had to pay higher taxes, but they would in return get a higher benefit during the time that they weren't working? So this might be evidence, say, of people sort of over-reporting income in a previous period of time when they didn't actually have that income for the sake of getting the benefit. Is that possible, or is it something that wouldn't happen, you think?
Just to make sure that I understand correct, so you mean that we might observe higher wage during this conversion period at the expense of lower wage after that?
Well, so say that I receive a wage of 100 and I was correctly reporting it before, right?
Yeah.
Is there any danger that I would just say that I'm receiving 130 during this period of time just for the sake of getting a benefit later on, even though I didn't actually get that money during the conversion period?
But, well, what we have in the data is the employer's reported income, so this is not self-reported.
Okay.
Well, thank you. So they're very interesting. Just a couple of, one question and some suggestions. So the question is hours of work, right? So you mentioned you don't have this data. I mean, there's still the possibility that prior to the window, the conversion, what we see is that the families decided to work longer hours, right? Because in anticipation to the double benefit of making more money during that period, but also in the expectation of the bigger, larger windfall in the following 12 months. So all of this could be explained by increasing labor supply. So it'll be interesting to see your thoughts on that, if I understood your comment right. I think that the R-squared seemed very high for, I mean, 0.8, 0.9. I was surprised by that. So I wonder if there's collinearity on some of that. Now, one other comment is vital statistics. Given that you guys seem to be able to link everything with everything, which is fantastic, I wonder if you're able to bring in the vital statistics to look at weight at birth from those kids, right? And to see if basically, I mean, one thing that would also be good is if these kids are being born with greater health, right? So using things like the Apgar score or, you know, weight at birth to see if those mothers that are doing that, you know, the kids are being born in better health, because that can be another benefit of this. And one last suggestion is, given your motivation in the beginning on inequality, and the possibility to look at quantiles, right? Because it might be that some of these effects might be non-linear, and your story, you're looking at the average effect, but it might be that higher earning parents might be actually making even more money than the mean, right? Which is the OLS. So it might be very non-linear, this effect, which will make the inequality story potentially even more interesting or salient. Thank you.
Thank As to hours, yes, well, it would be, we were thinking about that, but then also we thought, is it possible that really a woman, when she's like already pregnant, that she would decide to work very hard? And I mean, maybe we cannot really test it, but we thought about that, and then we thought that it is, we think that a more realistic scenario would be that women switch to part-time during pregnancy, or they don't change their working hours. Yeah, but unfortunately, yes, we cannot test it. As to the R-square, well, we control using the fixed effects. We control for, we have fixed effect for individual firm. So for each firm, there is a fixed effect, and for each individual. So once individual switches to a different firm, we have different. And the last regression, we control for individual time and time and firm trend. So it basically explains a lot of variation. That's why we have this very high R-square. For merging, well, since we are just users, we didn't merge anything ourselves. We were provided anonymized IDs, which we could use to link individuals in the wage database with benefits database. But otherwise, we cannot. But of course, it would be very interesting to see the effect on children.
And there was a question about the quintiles and the
yes,
inequality?
and yeah, thank you. It's also something that we should look at, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yeah. No? I have a question, if as a moderator I'll follow. Based on this data, do you have any estimates about the size of the informal payments to the women who, or any kind of feeling that you can make about that?
Yes, well, what we see, the interpretation of this coefficient is that, say, the last one is that in the private sector, during the, due to the conversion, wages grow by 6%, by about 6% faster
6%,
than, so the wage conversion generates this growth.
Mm-hmm.
We will have, in the paper, we'll also have some fiscal implications of this, but I didn't put it into the presentation today.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Who pays? So the payment that the parents receive, it's basically a fiscal expenditure, right? So the employer themselves, they don't have any costs.
No, that's right.
Out of but have you done kind of any qualitative work in terms of what is the behavior of firms? Because for you to be finding this impact, right? I mean, this should be something quite pervasive. So if you start talking with people here, what is the qualitative evidence that you have? Is that it is about misreporting, or is it because of hours of work?
Just by talking to people, well, yeah, what we hear is in line with what we get, is that there is legalization, temporary legalization of earnings. And the fact that we mostly observe it in small firms, also it's what we hear, it's pretty common that employer and the woman, they know each other, and they just when the employer employs the woman, this is the initial kind of deal that if you need, I will increase your wage, and then you will get a good benefit. But before then, until you don't need it, I will just pay you in the envelope.
Any more questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Anna. And for our final presentation, We'll be moving to geospatial and administrative data for research purposes. All the signers from the Central Statistical Bureau, please.
Signer from Statistical Bureau. I'm not researcher. Also, I'm not data producer. But my duty is acting like a bridge between researchers and data. So, Martin started his presentation. Oops, where is the instruction? No? Actually, it's too complicated. Which one it was? Just. No? Ah, okay. But it shows, yeah, strange, it shows opposite direction. Martin mentioned Riga, year 1999. But I will go back further, year 1854, London. Do you know what happened there? Yes. Yeah, cholera outbreak, which killed more than 600 people. And John Snow visualized individual death cases, and which showed such picture. And it became clear why the death cases is happening there. And it was clear the root cause of these death cases. Before that, it was not clear how cholera is spreading around. There was assumption that it was spreading around by air, but after looking on this picture, it was clear that there was just one infected well. And after that well was shut down, the cholera stopped in London. It's just one simple analysis. How we can use geospatial data to understand more. By looking on number 600, it does not say nothing, almost nothing. It says just figure, but putting the data on the map, you can do analysis and understand much more. Okay, let's go back to the future. What CSB offers? Of course, CSB offers classical statistical output. Mainly it's products where value is added by CSB. It's CPI, GDP, it's population figures. Nowadays, population figures is calculated from administrative sources. It's not exact number. It's, let's say, a function from around 30 different administrative sources. Wage statistics, which are combined sources, survey plus administrative sources. And of course, there is hidden part, which users don't see very often. And that part, raw data, is hugest part. from which scientists can do research. Of course, it's survey data, of course, it's administrative data, and of course, it's possible to combine those data sources by using IDs, personal IDs, enterprise IDs, address IDs, and it's like looking on the iceberg. Regular statistics is that which is floating on water, but the huge analytical potential is hidden below water. So we are looking for scuba divers to study that part. Yeah, statistics Latvia somehow succeeds with scuba divers. We have several research projects which are going on. For example, Latvian National Bank is regularly using our data. Ministry of Health is subcontracting World Bank. Ministry of Finance is subcontracting World Bank. And the data is analyzed, and everybody are interested in individual records because it is possible to combine data sources. It is possible to create own added value. And of course, the Latvian University is also our client. They are using population census 2000 and census 2011. And now we are preparing for them a new data set, which will be georeferenced population census 2000, 2011, and of course other data sources like state revenue data, data from land cadastre. Yeah, I also mentioned World Bank that it is ongoing project. Which data sets are available? If we draw timeline starting from 2000 and finishing at 2017, population census 2000, let's say, is our first data set which covers all Latvian inhabitants. Now we are working to georeference it, and it means that what does it mean for researcher? Riga is huge administrative unit, but by georeferencing population census, it is possible to draw conclusions on districts, on sub-city districts, like one side of the Daugava or other side of the Daugava, or even go even in smaller ones. The same situation is with population census 2011. By combining those data sets, it is possible to follow up what happened with the person. Person moved from Latgale to Riga or went abroad. It have huge analytical potential. The same for research purposes are available all other surveys carried out by CSB. It's household labor force survey, household budget survey, EU survey, and of course regular statistics like population data. CSB have several administrative data sources, like most important one is state revenue service data, which has records on all persons and enterprises, other administrative data sources, and also we are offering possibility to link data from sources which are outside CSB. I can go back to the research project on healthcare system. Here was linked population census data with health records. It was possible to see where person lived and his illness history. So it is it is analytical possibilities to understand what was analytical possibilities to analyze distance to hospitals, distance to healthcare institutions. What I would like to say, there is no data set which will fit every research. There is no such just I can take from shelf and give to researcher. All research start with discussions on aims and available data, selection of data sources and linking. Mode of access. You already know that we are protecting privacy. You are working with data remotely. The data is not leaving statistical office, and CSB always checks outputs before sending them to researcher. And of course, there is formal provisions, contract, confidentiality commitment, and after that, the data set is available to researcher. This is more point for discussions. Everybody knows that statistical outputs like LFS, EU, SILC is more or less harmonized. But when we working with administrative data is dependent from national legislation, and legislation is not stable. It is changing over time. And researchers should be able not to only understand the data to analyze figures, but also follow national legislation, because the changes in legislation is reflected in the data. For example, we saw that just before that salaries were increased slightly after pregnancy. It's the way how the society reacts on changes in legislation. And my next slide is way forward, because statistical office are producing, let's say, classical outputs, and they have we do not have possibilities to analyze all aspects of data. And here is research community which can greatly help policymakers to understand data and make decisions which are based in the data. So, thank you for attention, and in case any questions, the floor is open.
So, questions? Please.
I have a comment. No, I think this is fantastic. I mean, this is, I think, the direction that the most advanced statistical agencies are going, and I think that the questions that you pose are very valid ones, right? I mean, one dimension that I would add of complexity to a lot of this is the fact that you're going at great lengths to assure anonymization, right? But what does it mean to anonymize data at this day and age, right? When people have so much data in public domain, right? In social media, Twitter accounts, so on and so forth, right? What is the thinking of, as a statistical agency, would you bring to this discussion? This is a question that I have, so I really don't have an answer. Look very much to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a question on which is impossible to answer. Everybody puts pictures on Facebook. When everybody goes to the trip, after 2 hours, there is picture on visited places. But from other side, duty of statistical office is to protect respondent privacy. We gave promise to use the data only for statistical purposes. And yeah, there is two sides of coin. From one side, everybody are open, but from other side, we should protect, and to answer that, we will follow our obligation, but we will give you a possibility to do research. And you have access to anonymized personal IDs, it's hashed personal IDs, and it is possible to link and create different data sets. Of course, there is some things which persons definitely will not share. It's health data. Nobody is very keen to share his health situation. So there is no such, let's say, straightforward answer that nowadays everything is on public domain.
Okay. More questions from there? No questions from the listeners. I have a question. Yeah, I think you have a hidden agenda here, of course, which is to get the people who are here from the ministries, from the regional governments, from the researchers, to use the data you have more. Specifically, the geographical data that we're talking about. Who do you think uses that effectively now, and who would you wish to see coming to you more to use that?
Yeah, georeference data is a new domain which requires specific skills to analyze, and it's the reason why we are here. Mm-hmm. It's also a faculty of geography, and future students are coming from here, and mm-hmm. one of our tasks is demonstrate that mm-hmm. such data is available and it is possible to use it even in everyday training process. University of Latvia is, of course, our users, and they use such data for mobility study. Mm-hmm. I think in 1 or 2 months period, we will have the data set census 2000, census 2011, and place of where he lives today. Mm-hmm. So it will be possible to study the reasons of migration. It is possible to link that data with building characteristics like and also state revenue service data like income level and mm-hmm. other data. The use can be broad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how about local governments? How are
local governments? Is there any representative of local government here? For local governments like Riga, it's great potential to understand what is happening in subsidy districts. Maybe there is areas where population size is increasing, in some areas increasing, because we know that 1/3 or even more of population are living in Riga.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. The local government representatives here, do you see the use for this information? I mean, yeah?
I think that there is use, and we will more actively use this data you offer for our analysis. But at this moment, I don't have any clear indications into how I would use it. Mm-hmm. So
we had open data days in CSB when the georeference data was used to plan possible bicycle networks. So it was one form application, and second form of application, I know that it was used to understand what is happening with waste treatment.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a question? That's a comment?
Yeah. One question. In terms of this data, right? How much of this data can be accessed outside your servers? How much of this data that you're, especially the ones that you're linking the administrative records, needs to be used through remote connection, right?
Yeah,
and then, because one of the things that also comes to my mind is that there is more and more kind of usage, especially when you talk about geospatial, right, of very computationally intensive methods, right, especially when you start thinking of machine learning, predictive analytics, and things like that. Now, what is the vision that you have, right, on how to make this kind of data available for researchers to be able to use with these newer methods, right, which are very computationally intensive, but are becoming more and more popular and easy to implement? Would the idea be to partner with places that would have the computational capacity, or you have this computational capacity? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because the detailed data and spatial data requires huge computer powers, and in case such project will arrive to our doors, we will look for solution. We are discussing with several partners. Maybe we can go the way that we install additional hardware on our server room. So we are open to different solutions to provide possibility to analyze to analyze data.
Yeah. I was just going to turn to the Ministry of Welfare.
It's completely not the competence of ministry I will mention now. I was in a conference last year where Lisbon City has combined geographical data with the accessibility standards and mapped the city of Lisbon as regards to decide which streets and what kind of jobs need to be done to get the city accessible for wheelchair users, and that was also made visible on a geographical map, adding the data on the steepness of the streets. That was very interesting. Maybe it's useful for our municipalities or maybe students who want to go into that direction. Thanks.
That is very. Is the ministry using this kind of information? Is the Ministry of Welfare using this information that's being presented in geographical information as well? Yeah. Yeah.
Not maybe geographical one, but we also were users of combining different data sets from from administrative, I think, data it was done, and also maybe even EU Silk data, I'm not sure. But it was done with the World Bank. Within World Bank project, we had a very long period of making different kind of agreements and signing papers. It took us almost half a year, but still we did it, and that was quite brilliant project because we got very interesting information about who is unemployed. We've got a quite full portrait of people who are unemployed, who are poor, and yes, that was the main information set, and we are going to have quite the same project in future again, and of course we will have discussions.
You will approach us.
Yeah, we will approach you, definitely. So this is our command, but we are using this approach. This is very good, actually.
Just, I would like to complement this, what local municipalities have said, because there is this monitoring tool for local municipalities administered by state regional development agency. It's visualizing data of local municipalities disaggregated by these regions, and there already are several tools using this geographical data and this geospatial visualization programs.
Yeah, I would like to mention that we supplied the data for Latvian Geoportal, which is available here, but it's a bit different data. It's data on public domain, and its aggregation level is 1 by 1 kilometer of grid cell. It's not point-based data.
Thank you for your interesting presentation. I have one more idea about maps. It's just new idea to put on the map a variable about pollution and other environmental problems. We have in Silk such a variable, and maybe it will be interesting for data users to see this pollution around all areas.
Yeah, but in your case it is a sample, and in
Yes.
case what I mentioned, it's pollution and it's toilets in Latgale region, and that type of data was used to measure pollution. You understand what type of toilets with heart on the doors. Probably you will not have such data on Silk.
I had a question for analysis about the analysis you did was actually really very sophisticated, and the data you needed were quite specific. How easy or difficult was it for you to get to cooperate with the state, with the state revenue service and so forth to get that data? No, I was asking for you, for Anna.
So we obtained the data from state social insurance agency, and well, we needed to write a research proposal, and how long did it take? I don't quite remember. Several months, I guess. No, but it was quite an easy process. So we can only use this data for particular topics, but otherwise, no, it was quite easy, yeah.
So the data is broadly available. Would you second that from the World Bank's point of view? Yeah. Did you want to add anything else? You were.
I think for us, what I think it's it has a little bit is the computational capacity, right? That I think it's something to think about it, right? That even for our methods, it's we had to be creative. Let's put it this way in some of the things and solutions, and that is something to think about. But other than that, I mean, I think the data access and it was very clear, the process, and very easy to.
Is that because you can't take the data outside of the
yeah, which is
server?
understandable as well. I mean, it's I think for very good reasons. But I don't think we should be able to get. But one issue that will come always, right, is depending on the methods. This is gonna be a constraint. Right?
Yeah, we already know that problem. We are a bit short on computation power, so soon will be some investments also in that field.
Any other questions? Well, I don't know. Anything else that you would like to say about?
Yeah, it was great to see you here. It was a really interesting presentation, and we saw good examples how can be used data in different ways, which was different from originally intended by joining, I think, 3 or 4 data sources. It was population census, EU Silk survey, household budget survey, and state revenue service, 4 data sources. In your case, it was 1 administrative data source, and then I hope in the future will be a lot more projects to report on and have the seminar on best experiences. Okay, thank you for attending.
Okay. If there are no more questions or comments, then I'll say thank you to all the participants. Thank you to all the speakers. I think it was very interesting. Thank you to the people who are watching through the internet. And I hope that this will be a push for people to take advantage of this information. As we can see, the Latvian statistics is very interested in people using this, actually, for both to find out what's happening in Latvia and to shape policy. So I hope we'll be able to use that and get better policies out of this information. Thank you very much.